We're live.
All right, that sounds good. We're live, and so today's topic is going to be what taboo. So we're supposed to like actually warn the crowd that like we may discuss things that you may find triggering, and we will not hold it personally, like against you if you decide that you want to log out for your own needs. But I think don't Jordan, don't you have a story, something like that you want to share?
Yeah, I do. I do. If we can do that before we get hot and heavy here, you guys mind?
Let's do it.
Go for it.
Because, and I want to kind of tap into my inner Tyson storytelling, you know. So I'm going to give it my best go here because, Valentine's Day is coming up, and I call it the Big V, and it's a special day for me because, like, in a very cliche-like way, I proposed to my wife that day.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. So, and I've always considered myself a hopeless romantic. And, my wife would probably say I used to be a hopeless romantic. And nowadays I'm just kind of hopeless. But either way, I wanted my proposal to be memorable. Okay. So here's what I did. It started with a Minnesota Wild hockey game at the XL Energy Center in
Is she a
St.
hockey
Paul.
fan, or are you the hockey fan?
She is not really any kind of a sports fan, but she'll like kind of pretend to be. And her friend worked there and kind of hooked us up with some tickets.
Okay, continue.
So it was kind of special, and she's more than willing for that stuff. But so I parked at Sibley and 6th Street because it's walking distance from the arena, and also because there's a little park there that they light up in the wintertime, and it's just breathtaking. And so when the game was over, I texted my brother because I had coordinated with him and his family to hide in that park and record the whole thing.
Right.
And so as we were leaving the arena, it had just started to snow, and it was like that big fluffy snow, you know what I mean, where it's like it just floats like a feather.
Sure.
And it was just picture perfect. So I had prepared a conversation for the walk to the car. I had a few days earlier I had learned how to say "Will you marry me" in 5 different languages.
Wow.
Learned I googled it. And
yeah. How do you say no in 5 different languages?
I think it's all the same.
Okay.
I was prepared for that. I was prepared to have to translate the word no and yes. But so as we were walking, so then I looked at her and I said, I have something really important to say to you. And I proceeded to say, "Will you marry me?" First in French, then in Italian, then in Chinese, Arabic, and finally Spanish. And Spanish, I thought she would maybe catch on because her mother's 100% Mexican and is fluent in Spanish. So, but she didn't. She just kind of looked at me with a confused look and said she had no idea what I was talking about. And I timed it out perfectly so that right as I was saying the last "Will you marry me" in Spanish, we were smack dab in the middle of this brilliant snow-covered park. And she gave me this confused look one final time, and I grabbed her arm firmly yet lovingly and said, "Well, how about this?" And I stooped one knee in the soft snow, and as my sweaty, trembling palm tried to fumble the ring out of my sweatshirt pocket, and I somehow was able to mutter the words, "Will you marry me?" And the silence was deafening yet calm. The snowflakes seemed to freeze in midair, and the earth just stood motionless as we awaited her reply. And with her fuzzy mittens kind of covering her mouth and tears welling up in her eyes, she looked at me and said, "What's the bit?" And then we had 4 kids, but that's a story for another day.
Well, apparently we know what the bit was. I mean,
I can't believe I was blindsided by that.
oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
Happy Valentine's Day, boys.
Thank you. Happy Big V, Jordan. Happy Big V. Jesus.
That's what everybody likes is a big V. Got it.
I want to tell my story now about how I proposed. Like, this isn't what we were supposed to do, but like,
All right, let's do it.
that was
Like, I have a proposal story too. So let's.
I feel like I just watched a Hallmark movie without like any of the drama. That was amazing. You should have gone last. There's no way I can compare to this. Okay, so it's like, yeah, golly, it's like October, and in California, you never know if it's going to be warm or cold. So you always dress for cold, and then you dress down afterwards. So I've got this big bulky hoodie that I wore, and I took her to Disneyland, and I've got this diamond ring in my pocket, and we get there, and it's like 104 degrees, and I'm just like, there's no zipper on the hoodie. So I'm wearing jeans, so you're going to see like the huge bulge. So I take my jacket and I just like ball it up, and I'm holding it under my arm, and I'm trying to find like the perfect ride. Like, what's the most romantic ride in Disneyland? And I was like, I want to do like the ferry. The ferry is just like, that's the best thing I can do at Disneyland. It's kind of romantic. So we'll do that, but it was closed. So I'm just like, this day is going great so far. Where else can we go? And I'm holding this like pouch of this hoodie in my arms, and we're in line, and she's like, why don't you wrap it around your waist? And I'm like, I got to think of a good reason to say no to this now. So I was just like, I don't know. I don't want people. I don't even remember what I said, but I came up with something because I'm good at that. Clearly not in the moment, just then. And so we get on Space Mountain, and I'm holding on to it, clutching on. I'm like, let's go to the Jungle Cruise, because that's water. Not even really thinking about like, that's the hokiest ride after, like, It's a Small World after all. It's like so much like Cornhub. You know what I mean? Like, every joke is the corniest thing in the world. So we get on there, and everyone's like packed in like sardines, and they're telling their jokes. And I'm like, all right, well, let me do this, because, you know, like, this isn't going well this day. I think it's already been like 4 hours of me holding this diamond ring in my pocket, and it's 100 degrees. And so I try to get down on one knee, and I can't. So I'm just like smashing knees with her, and I can't. And like, the floor is a little sticky, and there's this couple who's like what? God, like 18 years old, who you think it's like their first date. And they're looking at me, and they're like, no, don't do this. This, no. And they would not make eye contact with me while I proposed to my girlfriend at the time. And I was like, you know, like, I wasn't huge into marriage. That wasn't something that I thought about as a kid. Like, that wasn't the goal. So that kind of took an effort. So the speech was kind of like, I think we should live together. And it's just this bumbling fool of like, we work well together, and I like you, and you like me. And
so you presented a case. You're like, this is.
It was an ultimatum. Either, you know, stay on this ride forever or marry me. And the couple behind us that wouldn't make eye contact refused to even say congratulations or acknowledge that it happened, and nobody else clapped. And that was it. Like, that was the most it was the Jungle Cruise, and that's what I remember of my, like, I should have gone first.
Does your wife remember it that way?
Oh, you know, she doesn't. She's like, because I'm the wife in the story. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the one that remembers all the details, and she's like, we got on a cruise. He proposed to me. I said yes. You know, like, leave me alone. That was spot on, by the way.
That was spot on. Well, all right. I got my my proposal. So, like, there's some tarnish on this story because we all know how it ends. But so I actually proposed to my ex-wife from a wheelchair on Christmas morning, which is a very cruel thing to do, because how do you say no to a guy who stumbles out, like half falls out of a wheelchair, and then
is this
says,
a bit?
No,
was that a bit?
What?
No.
Why were you in a wheelchair?
No,
Tell
all
us
of
why
my
you're in a
stories,
wheelchair.
all of my stories are 100% true. So
No, but I mean, like, was the wheelchair the bit?
So I actually had asked her to marry me earlier under situations of duress, or I suppose not duress. Duress might not be the right word, but like when I was 19, I was in a car accident in Fairview, Wisconsin. I was on Highway 12, and I crossed over the center line. in my 1986 Chevy Cavalier, and I hit a grain truck with 4 tons of corn in it.
Jeez.
Like head on. And my then girlfriend was with me, and I just went over the center line by like 2 feet, but it was enough to like destroy my car. I actually had to be like med flighted to the UW hospital here in Madison so that they could save my leg, because they were like, oh, we should probably cut this thing off. But in the process, like I never lost consciousness, but I got pretty badly injured, and we'll talk about that another time. That's a story for another time. But what happened is like they found me in the car, and apparently I was just screaming, and they're like, he's obviously in pain. And
You think?
so what they did is they gave me a whole bunch of morphine, and it turned off my long-term memory. So I would kind of do these things where I go, what happened? And they're like, you were in a car accident. I'm like, who's with me? Amanda. I'm like, is she all right? Yes, she's fine. And then I would go, will she marry me? And then they're like, oh, that's nice. And then I'd kind of pass out a little bit, and then I'd wake back up, and I would just cycle that for 5 minutes. So she kind of knew it was coming.
Did she change her answer ever? Because I feel like I would change my answer just each time.
Well, I mean, like, I don't, like, she could have said no like a bunch of times in the emergency room, but I mean, I don't have any memory of it. But like, I had paid for tuition that morning, so I had just enrolled in college the morning of the car accident. So I'd just gotten back on my mother's insurance, which is pretty helpful because I was hospitalized for 2 weeks, and then another week a couple months later to get the bone graft and that sort of stuff because I broke my leg so badly. But
your story is a different Hallmark movie.
Yeah. My stories always end with like, well, I made a bad decision and then got crushed, and then I was like, hey, let's
jazz
do
hands.
something funny. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like, I went over there because I didn't need the tuition money anymore. I spent it on an engagement ring because I, obviously couldn't go to school for the first semester. And so they dropped me off over there.
Do you regret that decision? Is that a decision you wish you had back?
What, asking her to marry me?
No, spending your money on an engagement ring instead of school.
Oh no. I mean, I just like, I ended up going to like, no, that's a story for another time.
My sources say otherwise, but okay, let's move on.
I mean, it might be like that, but yeah, so I was kind of carried over there because I was confined to a wheelchair, and my leg was up in this like big propped up thing. So, but I knew I needed to get down on one knee, and that was very difficult. So like I literally half fell out of this wheelchair to get down on my one good knee while the other leg was like propped up. And she's like, what the hell is going on? And then she opened it, and then I was like, will you marry me? And she said, fine.
Her word. Oh my goodness. The amount.
Was there an eye roll attached to that?
No. She's just like,
I would have been out so quickly. Fine was the answer.
It's a tough answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I was. There were many signs that I willfully ignored. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was our proposal stories. Let's get into some taboos. Perfect segue into that. I've got some taboos that start us off. Like astrology is kind of one of those things that people think is like made up and silly. And whenever you walk into a room and you're like, my moon is in Taurus and my Mercury is in Gemini, people are like, okay, they immediately make an assumption about you.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you guys think about astrology?
What do I think about it?
That is what I asked.
I think that I personally don't put any faith in it.
You don't believe it? It's a hoax?
I wouldn't say that I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a hoax. I would say that I'm a big believer in the Church of, I don't know. But out of the things I would choose to believe in, that's not on the list. But I do think it's interesting, and I know what I am, and I like to read about it sometimes. But I don't foresee myself ever putting like faith in that.
Jordan, what about you?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like I wouldn't bet my life on it. But I think there's a lot of interesting things in the universe, a lot of energies going on that we don't understand. And so I'm interested when people talk about that stuff. I listen, but yeah, I mean, if it was, I wouldn't bet my life on it.
So does this include crystals as well, or just
Sure.
horoscopes?
I think absolutely horoscopes, crystals. It can be any sort of divinity that is not something you can touch. And Jordan, I ask you, like, do you think I make decisions that you could trust? Like, do you think I go about? I mean, there's some decisions obviously you don't agree with, but like the way that I treat people, do you agree with some of the way that I go about my life? Do you have issues with it?
I mean, I think that my answer would be yeah, for the most part. I trust you, but that's also there's a lot of people that I trust that I know that they can fail, and but with some of it is maybe I would trust you less if I kind of saw your cards and knew how you were making the decision. Like if you were rolling the dice and that was your decision maker.
If you knew I woke up every morning and I read my horoscope and it said, "Don't go into business with Geminis today," and then I avoided every Gemini that day, and it turned out I was right, and I didn't tell you the why. Like that's something that you wouldn't know. You wouldn't be able to disprove. It wouldn't necessarily mean that was right.
There's also other factors. So, I'm willing to put it into the factor pool as a factor. You could, but there's going to be other factors to that. I think.
Go ahead.
So I think it's interesting because like whenever the talk of like horoscopes comes up, it usually is bookended by like the question, and I see it happening in the chat here of like, what's your sign and that sort of thing. And I find it interesting to be like, okay, so what do you think I am? Because people who are very studied at it were like, well, you have this energy and that sort of thing. And for the most part, everybody gets it wrong with me. But I think it's because what you see of me at the surface is people will make assumptions about kind of who I am before they really kind of understand the whole picture, I guess. But,
well, I'm an Aries, so that means I'm overbearing, and it's a fire sign. But I also have Moon in Taurus and Gemini rising. And I say that not knowing exactly what it means, but that it kind of balances me out on some level. Yeah, no. And would you
Gemini
guys know
rising? That sounds great. I trust you now.
What do you think you are, Jordan? What do people, based on your birthday?
Based on my birthday, I mean, so July 8th. What is that? I'm a Cancer.
So that's a water sign, right?
Yeah. Is there like a fish floating?
It's two fish floating one on top of another, in like a very sexual kind of picture. Is what it is.
It is. It's very infinity-esque.
I'm a dead fish sinking. Is that a thing?
I'd say it's more 69-ish, honestly.
That's what we were looking for. That's what we were trying to say. Tyson, what are you?
Which that's a taboo.
That is. That's why that was hard to say. What's your sign?
What's my sign? Well, I was born 7 days before Jordan, so I am also a Cancer.
That makes sense.
All right, we're water brothers.
That's exactly. Yes, we are brothers of a fishtail or
you are 69 brothers. That's adorable, guys.
We are 69ing with our crab claws.
I'm the top one.
Well, okay, that's fine. I like to be a power bottom, anyways. But like,
cool. Good to know. I'm writing that down for future meetings. Anyway,
I think we discovered that I was a power bottom earlier on today.
Are we ready to talk about this? Or are we ready to talk about our day?
Nope, that's a story for another time.
Okay, we'll talk about that at the end to tease the audience about what our day entailed. And,
so, how are we defining taboo first? I don't even know. Can we ask Googs?
The way that I define it is the stuff that you're not supposed to talk about in public or in non-private or intimate settings.
I define it as things that are difficult to talk about, things that people kind of immediately attach a stigma to when they hear the word without even kind of diving deep into what that is.
Geez, that's everything nowadays.
And let's talk about everything.
It can be, for sure.
it definitely leaves us open to any sort of broad discussion, so we can take this into whatever sort of taboos you guys want to talk about.
Well, all right. Well, I got one, and it'll book on the last one. So the last time I spoke about horoscopes with somebody is with one of my improv friends, and then she just, apropos of nothing, just said, "Well, I don't really know what kind of energy you have, but I think that you're a lesbian trapped in a hetero man's body. Like, I really feel like you're a lesbian, Tyson."
I feel like I'm supposed to be offended by that statement, but I'm so confused by it that I can't be.
I was just like, "Thank you." I think like she meant it as a compliment. I know for certain she meant it.
It's an odd label to kind of throw at somebody. That how well did you know this person?
Very well. I mean, we're in an improv group together, so like we're trying to work on like intimacy. So when you practice, like we'll share things about ourselves, and then have happy, silly, fun time, which is just it's talking games and playing acting. It's not the other kind of happy, silly, fun time. But yeah, like. I would say that she knows me well, and it's probably because of, my wealth of feminine energy.
I relate to that definitely on some level. I feel that. But I would also not classify myself underneath such a generalization, I guess. And
that's the thing that the reason I bring it up as a taboo is because like we're using the term lesbian as a hasty generalization there, right? Like, what does that mean? So when she says you're a lesbian trapped in a hetero man's body, like she's making a lot of assumptions based on labels. And labeling in our society is kind of a big deal, but it's one of those things that we also are like, you get to pick your own label. You don't have someone else apply it to you.
That's the important part of it is that's the part that kind of should kind of make you stop and go like, let's talk about this, because I feel like you are, and then you get to label her with the exact same sort of generalization. You're a train conductor inside of an orangutan's body, and it's like it's just.
Oh, I just responded. I think that you are a lesbian trapped in the body of a bisexual, and that's kind of what it was.
So you're like yes-anding her.
Yeah, I yes-anded her. That's. I mean, obviously, it's improv practice. Everything goes.
I think for me, I just kind of go back to I don't know all that stuff. I don't know. It does come back to how do you define that? If we aren't defining our terms, then things can get lost. And I end up kind of thinking, well, what's the value in it? So by saying that statement or by making that label, does it benefit you at all? Is there some sort of understanding that helps you in life to go, okay, I understand this now because of that.
Well, I do think like those tests that we took some tests this week that kind of told you your personality type, and like I'm like extrovert, intuitive, feeling, and like judgment or something. And I read it and it was like, Jordan, it was down to a T to like me trying to save the world. And I was sitting there reading it like, how am I so seen by this test? It was very, but it was also very like helpful, I feel, to kind of pinpoint it and say like into words, this is me to my core. Like everything about that statement, like just resonated within me.
Yeah. And I think that those are helpful. So all that stuff is beneficial. There is something fun, first of all, and something beneficial about kind of understanding certain tendencies that you have or certain makeups that you have. I also tend to believe that it's guidelines, not the rule. Like at every moment you get a chance to kind of make a decision and be different, regardless of what you're labeled as. Even no matter how true. I mean, you might have a tendency to think or do things one way, but I think that every moment you get to choose who you're going to be, how are you going to be.
Oh man, that's so Christian.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. That was too easy. But
I disagree that you get to choose, because I feel my day starts and the way that my day goes isn't always my decision. Like the way that I feel has nothing to do with how I want to feel. Because if that were the truth, I wake up every day and be the happiest person in the world, and would have never spent 3 months in bed from depression that I can't explain why I felt alone in a world of billions of people.
I think personally, to bridge the gap there is like I believe it in I choose. So I come from a Christian background as well. I choose to believe in like the Tao of Forrest Gump. You know, where he's at the end of that movie and he's like at Jenny's gravesite and he's like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if we're floating around all like accidental like and life's a box of chocolates like mom says, or if there's a destiny like Lieutenant Dan, but I think maybe it's both. Like that's what I believe. Like I think that like both are kind of happening simultaneously, and I could delve really deep on that particular topic.
Well,
But
sure. I think the Forrest Gump
that,
thing is good. I think that's a good philosophy.
I do think that we as humans, when we talk like nurture and nature, like I think we all have a nature and then we're nurtured with coping mechanisms for our own nature. So like we're kind of base programmed with kind of certain tendencies. And I think that that's where those personality tests really come in handy because they help give you an advantage of what your tendencies are. Right. But I do believe in the power of like, you know, self-actualization and like, you know, making a willful decision to do things a certain way. But I will also say that there's no level of time management class that I can take that will all of a sudden make me like, you know, choose my way out of having ADHD. Like
Right.
There are things that are built into me, and like and almost like all ADHDers comes up as ENFPs. Why is that?
What's the P?
It's a perceiver, and I did take that test as well, and it was very damning. And I almost want to read one section out loud, but I think I'm going to do it as a TikTok. But like, there's like the romance section. There was one paragraph that was every single word was dead.
Isn't it crazy? Isn't it? Yeah. I mean, like, who wrote that? How does that?
Mm-hmm.
I can't. It bottles my mind.
It bottles it.
Bottles it up.
Just bottles it. Just right up.
Pop the cork. Hey, I do want to clarify though, because you made some assumptions in what I meant by what I said, and I was certainly not intending to say that someone could just like snap out of depression or like snap out of ADHD. Like that wouldn't be my point. But there's a very real thing about this moment. You have a decision that you can make, and you get to choose what that is.
Perception.
You can't choose how long it takes for it to impact much, or even if the next moment you'll fail and not do it, like it, but you do, you know, it's almost like there's this guy, what's his name? He got a name of a baseball player, but it's not the baseball player, Jim Palmer. And he had brought up a philosophy in this deal I was watching that was very interesting, because to me, Tyson, it was not Christian. To me, this kind of felt like it challenged my Christian beliefs, because it was his basic statement was like, the past doesn't exist, the future doesn't exist. The only thing that's real is this moment. That's it. I
agree with that.
And that's kind of what like, because when you label yourself, you can tend to say, well, that's me forever, you know, and now you just put yourself, you kind of defined your future, and the future hasn't happened yet, and then you're kind of helpless, and you're club utterly hopeless.
I agree with that. I think we got,
but that's a story for another day.
There it is. Yeah, we definitely misunderstood sort of that part of it, and I think I agree with that. With everything you're saying, but that's perception for me. So that is the definition was where we got lost, where my definition of choosing was the feeling that you can't control, and not the perception that you can control over that feeling. Mm-hmm. You decide how you take it on. You know, so I see that, you know, like you've changed my perception on days where I went into it with another perception, and I made that choice to allow your words to plant a seed.
I will on a bookend on that, on one of those topics there, and it's going to probably play into something that we talk about a little bit later, or at least I hope so. But you said control. I feel like I can't control certain things, and like Jordan's also talking about control. We're talking about this concept of control, and this is one of the things that like I got from one of my therapists, and it changed my life. You know how we have those moments where those micro impacts where it's like the right thing was said at the right time, the right moment, and really changed everything. Like this was one of those instances. My therapist was like, a lot of people think that control is either you have all control or you're in complete control or you're completely out of control. But control isn't binary. We have a range of control. It's some. Sometimes we think that we don't have any control, but we actually do have some. It's just not the level of control we want, so we still feel powerless. Or in other times when we think that we're in complete control, and that's also a lie because we're not. So we need to, personally, I would say that my life is better when I think of control as a spectrum. Like sometimes I have some control over different things. So like I have some control over my free will and what I can choose, but that's also my reality is shaped by my perception, and what has shaped my perception is like that's intrinsic to who I am and like how.
Yeah, and that goes back to your nature sort of
Exactly.
philosophy.
So what is fueling what? But I think that I like to come down into the middle range on that particular sort of thing.
All right. We've got some other topics that I'd like to move on to. Money was one of the things that people said that's taboo. You guys have any taboo feelings about money?
Yeah, I don't like rich people at all. Like
They don't like you either. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm like prejudiced against rich people, which is like something I need to work on. 'Cause I know it, and I have to like.
Why is that? Do you just feel like they don't deserve it? Do you feel like? I mean, what's the root of that?
What's the root of it? I mean,
Yeah.
like I was raised in a rural community, and so you kind of are taught to not.
At some point, you've got to let go of the past.
Because
there's a handful of people
answer.
that control everything, and
it's true. It's true. But at the same time, I know the thing that like the generalization that makes it harder for me to let go of it now is that, well, why are you so rich now? Like, I mean, like if I had a lot of money, it would be gone in no time because I would spend it immediately and then invest in all of these different things, and I would not be a good steward of it. I would rapidly put it back into the system. So it's maybe I'm just prejudiced against rich people because I'm so freaking terrible with money, and I'm just jealous. And
I think that's
honestly what
that's
probably
the bit, right?
what it is. Yeah, I'm just jealous of it. So
yeah, that makes sense. Money's one of those things I don't like to talk about with anybody. I feel very weird. I would rather a world where we all shared the bill and then you told me what my amount was at the end of life. You know what I mean? Where I was like, how much do I owe you for my part in what I did? And just go about life without that.
And when you don't have enough to cover, what are you going to do?
I'll have enough by the end. I'll have enough by the end. You know what I mean? Like, you know, that's the thing is I don't want to have that be a variable in my decision making.
I'm counting on being endearing enough to like get a loan from somebody to be like, hey, you want to cover me on this? Because
well, there's digital currency. I mean, it's a man-made thing, so it's not a real issue as far as like choices go. You choose that. You choose to make it an issue because you could get a loan and then poof, you now have $100,000 that you didn't have or whatever your credit is based on your face. That's not the amount.
Yeah, I think I could be 100 error.
Jordan?
Yeah, I think money. My beef with money is that it divides people, and I don't like that. You know, whenever money becomes a part of something, you know, whether it's in a relationship or a business or something, it always. And I mean, we've talked about this, Alex. I brought this up early on at something we were talking about, and it's like, man, it just so quickly corrupts people. It so quickly makes people stop trusting, stop feeling like things like all of a sudden there's like this fair thing that wasn't there before. And I think that's the taboo for me is.
Well, you hit on something very strong there. I'm having like a eureka moment here, Jordan. I'm really excited about this, about what the things you just said. Like when I'm talking about those micro impacts, you know, being open to the moments and letting them change who you are. Like when we talk about taboo, and like you said, it's, you know, money like can corrupt people and that sort of stuff. Money is just power. And like when I start
Ooh.
thinking about this particular topic, like the things that are taboo to talk about are all things that leverage your personal power in a situation. Like, because you can have sexual power, you can have like personal power. You can, like, we don't talk about what the sources of our power is. Like our ability to affect our surroundings, our ability to influence, manipulate others. Like those sort of things are the things that are the taboo things to talk about. Like even like we don't talk about mental health diagnoses because those things are taboo, because mental health diagnoses and the stigma that is attached to them affect how we are related to by others, which changes our power with them, like changes our level of influence with those people. And I personally fucking hate taboos in general, and I rail against them as much as possible.
Trying to think of just topics for this week, it was very difficult for me because like Jordan said, how do you define a taboo? And that's something that like people don't want to talk about, or they immediately attach a stigma to. And it's like, I have very few things that are off limits that I don't want to talk about. And money is definitely one of them. Politics is one that I will talk about, but it has to be among the right group. It can't be somebody who hasn't done any research, or I can't have not done any research. Like I can't go in blind and then spew off views that, aren't logical. So it's politics is another one that is very difficult to kind of talk about, because you immediately think, I now know everything about you because you said you identify with one side or the other.
Oh yeah, that's something that you were touching on a little bit earlier too. That I didn't, but like there's this transitory aspect, right? Like when you said, Jordan, you trust me, right? But like, just because you trust one aspect of a person's life, or you think one aspect of their life is good, does not mean that transitory property of good and trustful should transmit to like all of the other or things that are in their life or about who they are. It's the problem with why, as a society, we keep getting polarized and then pulling back, and polarized and being pulling back. And we keep doing this as humans over time, because we'll get polarized over something and then we realize, well, that's not fucking working. But or one side will win out. But like, I don't know. There's a lot to it. But I think we should probably talk about specific taboos as well. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think Taboo will always be a porn movie about incest to me. Like, that's just what it always is.
I've never seen the movie, but it sounds like Spanking the Monkey, which is also
so is the taboo thing about a porn movie about incest, is it because it's pornography, or because it's incest, or is it just because like you disagree with the positions? Like,
I don't know. Ask the person that named it Taboo.
Okay. Oh, I mean, I like the game Taboo though.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that game.
Like, have you guys not? Do you guys don't know about the porn movie called Taboo? Like
I missed that one.
Jeez.
Well,
I'm gonna stop talking now.
No, enlighten us, please.
It was one of the first ones that I got introduced to as a kid. That came out wrong.
That
Jordan, it's time for you to learn about the birds and the bees.
Who introduced you?
I had some crazy friends.
Were they older or the same age?
Same. Actually, some of them are girls. Yeah, I think I got introduced to porn by girls.
Why did you say it like that though? Like
I don't know, because maybe that's taboo. Like it just seems different.
Like girl, that is a taboo. There you go. Girls watch porn, Jordan. Women enjoy porn.
Time out.
Oh,
women don't like sex. We all know that, right? I mean, that's not a thing. Women don't enjoy sex at all. They don't talk about it for hours on end in a chat room at all.
But I hear you.
Like, I really thought, like, why am I the one bringing this back to sex? I really thought I was going to be the clean one of the group, and you guys would be constantly trying to talk about porn.
Tyson's wearing a button-up shirt. There's no way you're the clean one.
I feel like you guys are lying to me. You're like, this is a bit. You're doing a bit with me.
Yeah, right. We got in it together, and we took
every time he says something sexual, let's just look at him like he's crazy. Like, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, let's talk about sex. Let's keep going into that.
Like, what is it? What is sex? Is it when the penis goes in?
In what? I think again you have to define.
We got to define the penis.
And the what? What hole are we talking about? Apparently, this is all taboo.
I need to
porn.
know this before the big V.
You guys, yeah, right.
The big V.
We apparently found the topic you guys are uncomfortable with. Sex. We talked about it all last week. Like, what happened, guys? Let's.
I'll talk about sex. It's just like the mental block in my brain is just like there's like a tipping point. I'll either be able to talk about it for like a minute, or you're gonna get like 6 hours of like nonstop. Just here's all my thoughts. I'm so like we only have like half hour left in this program.
20 minutes even.
20 minutes.
Yeah. So sex toys. What about those? Personally, do you? Yeah, you're Tyson's pro sex toys,
I'm
Jordan.
pro sex toy.
I've never used one, so I've become only recently interested in possibly maybe bringing it up to my wife.
When's your birthday?
When's my birthday?
Yeah,
it's July 8th.
That's right. We already said that. That's right.
This sounds like this sounds like something that you could give a bouquet of, like on the big V. Just like a big bouquet of dildos. Just
really,
that's how I would choose to approach the topic. But I don't like taboo.
I don't know if I want to surprise my wife with that. I don't know how she'd take it. I really just have to muster up the courage to talk to her about it. And see, this might be all in my head, and I bring it up, and she's like, "Finally, yes, please, some other kind of penis going in me."
I think you won't know until you have that conversation, but
I'll just share the link to this episode with her, and then it'll take care of itself.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, I think that's a conversation that can only enhance your sex life. And I know you guys are probably going through a different eggplant calendar than some of us.
An eggplant calendar?
Yes, I have an eggplant calendar that keeps track of my sex life, and it denotes in the bed or in the shower.
Perfect. Got it. That's
like
am I the only one?
Alone?
Is it just me? No.
I've never tracked it. I mean, I just.
It's a fun game. I think you should start.
Well, I just had those 28 years with nothing, and then after that, it's been something, and I was like, well, I prefer the something over the nothing. But
fair enough.
I do want to say this though before like we move on too far much further. Like Jordan, I think that like being like having some trepidation about having that conversation is super freaking normal. I think everybody kind of runs across that because that's why talking about taboo. I mean, I even said earlier it's like something that you won't bring up unless it's intimate. But even in intimate topics, that's why I like the idea of it relating to things that has to do with power, because like in relationships, people have power over like what determines intimacy, and then like what is on board for intimacy and what and what is available when we're intimate. Like those types of topics, when you don't know how it's going to come out, are scary, especially when you love someone or you're attached to them. Because if it goes bad, then it's how do you put the genie back in the bottle? Like I'm a big fan of like having an agreement of like, well, we're just going to talk about everything, and when we run up against the crazy weird fetish that is outside my range, we have a complete forgiveness rule about it. However, when I say we, I'm talking about the person that I am not in a relationship with because I'm single, and, so who knows?
Can I ask you a question, Tyson?
Oh yeah.
Have you ever been sexually attracted to a man?
I have. Like I can admit when a man is good looking, and I've wanted to like hug another man, and even like cuddle time. But I don't know if like the sexual attraction was like that palpable. Like I don't think that
Sure.
I don't think that I've ever become aroused over a man. However, I guess I had one dream once.
I mean, I had a dream about Brad this week, but it wasn't necessarily sexual. He wasn't wearing pants, but I sleep.
That's not sexual.
I sleep nude, so I feel like most people aren't wearing clothes in my dreams, and maybe that's why.
Mm-hmm.
Is that taboo? Is it taboo to sleep nude? I really don't know. It's not, right?
No, it's not.
Get out of here.
No.
I think it depends on how good the lock is on your door.
I'm bad at that too.
So Tyson, between me and Alex, like Who would you do?
Between the two of you?
No pressure.
All right, which one of you is the better?
Do we need to take off our clothes?
No, don't. That's not what this is about.
No, I mean,
I'm thinking.
fair warning.
I want to be. I want to
seen
be.
me.
I want to be. I want to be the little spoon after, but probably the top during. So it's like I think when we talk about that sort of topic, like
Sure.
that we're talking about compatibility on a different level.
No, that is.
But yeah,
definitely-
I think I would probably want to date Alex and go out with Alex, but come home to Jordan.
Oh,
I think
that seems
that's-
fair.
that's-
I would be a good
that's-
time, but Jordan's good to wake up to.
Yeah, I think I would feel very secure with him spooning me. I think I'd feel nice and warm.
yeah. So I'm boring to hang out with, but I can cuddle.
I mean,
There was
you-
no
you-
good
you
answer.
said it
Tyson,
for
you
me.
were not going to win that answer. The best answer was both of us, just so you want to know for future. That was the right answer.
I would never be that non-committal. And
Sure. What else do you guys want to talk about? We've got mental health, we've got polygamy, we've got cheating. There's a bunch of other nope, not talking about that one. Actually, that's taboo. So maybe we do.
Polygamy is an interesting one.
Let's talk about that.
polygamy. So we're not talking polyamory, but polygamy, which means married to multiple people. Is that right?
I believe so.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Yeah, that sounds terrible. But I mean,
Let's talk polyamory. or
yeah, I'll
whatever.
go polyamory
Okay.
more.
So talk about it. You're pro that, or I mean, what's the issue between the two?
Well, polygamy involves marriage and typically some sort of religious sort of thing, and it's I don't really necessarily want to be married ever again. So
Is it the
idea of being
religion
married
part
to a
of it
bunch
that
people-
immediately just out of here? Like that's the part of it where you're like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, I associate it with
So it's the religion, a little bit of the religion attached to it.
some religious organizations based out of Utah that I'm just not necessarily on board with. But
No, I hear you. So let's talk about polyamory.
polyamory. I think that love is not a zero-sum game. I think it's possible to love multiple people
I
and
agree.
love them at different levels at different times. So polyamory seems functional from that standpoint, but I also know that we also as humans have different levels of attention needs.
Yeah.
And sometimes if
And
you're
jealousy too.
I mean, I could understand that one of the people that I'm romantically involved with loves somebody else and loves me, and I could be secure in it, but I could also be the one who wants the attention at that time and be jealous over the fact that someone else is getting it. So those topics, there's nuance and
Sure.
layers, but I do think that people should talk about this and not be afraid of the topic, because there are people you bring up polyamory to, oh, those fucking weirdos, fuck them. Jesus Christ, dude, it's supposed to be a man and a woman, all right, and that's the fucking way it goes. I mean, and I just throw my hands up in the air. There's no range for me to
But you bring up something interesting, because in my head, what came to my mind, the word competition, to feel like you were in competition with someone else for someone's attention, or it just seems like there's so much tension that could be a part of it. And going back to what you're saying, I mean, if you're talking through it, it seems like it'd be hard to navigate those waters successfully.
I think so, but I mean, I think that that's also kind of this topic that we keep kind of circling back on, is there's simplicity to certain things with religion, right and wrong in and of themselves those are simplistic ideas. We exist in a world of grays in between. Sex, that monogamy is simple. That's why it's theoretically easier to maintain. But is human sexuality a simple detail, or does it have layers? I think it has layers. So I do think it's complex, and because it's a complex topic, it takes a lot of work to try and do it at that level. And sometimes the stress is not worth it, and other times it is.
I think it goes down to that love part that you're talking about, where you have to kind of be in love with all of the people involved. I think if there's one person that isn't on that same wavelength and that connected part, then that jealousy is definitely going to come out real quick. And then it's going to be that one person feeling like, like, why did I do this? And that's where like the wall crumbles for me, is that there's no way to give everyone attention.
And do you, when you kind of go into something like that, is there still this idea of like forever? Because like with marriage, where you're kind of thinking, look, I'm going to love you forever, no matter what, for the rest of your life. And there's some security in that. Not that makes it easier to actually achieve, obviously, but there's this security of like, I'm not competing for your love. We decided we're going to love each other. We're in this for the long haul. Like, does that same mentality go into a polygamous relationship? Like, it's the 10 of us forever. Like,
I mean, it has to. I think it has to be the foundation. I think that if it's not, no, Tyson disagrees. I think it has to be. I think it has to be love. If you don't have that, then it falls apart. Tyson, what do you have to say about it?
So, like, I disagree with the idea that, like, love and forever. Like, I also disagree with the idea of unconditional love. I don't think that that's a thing. I think that love is always conditional. Like, I think if you say like, oh yeah, I love you unconditionally, well, start wailing on somebody. They're going to leave. Like, there's things that we do to each other as humans that we should never do to another human, but happen. And it will make love. It will expose the conditions of it.
Like, I feel like there's definitions that need to happen though with that conversation.
Sure.
Because you can define love you can love someone without while still having boundaries in place and while not still maintaining certain, like, you're not forced to maintain that abuse with them or anything. Like, you can leave them but still have a love for them, wanting the best for them. How do we define that? That's a topic for another day.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's a pretty big one. I mean, I like when we said taboo, like, I remember in the chat is like, there's like a topic I know is going to come up, but we're like down to like almost 10 minutes left, and I still feel like there's this one taboo that I want to bring up, but like, I also don't want to depart from this one. I feel like we could like bring the same exact topic to the table next time. But
yeah, and Lauren has a question for you, Jordan. Why do you think there can only be that in marriage, and what happens when it doesn't work? Would you change?
And remind me what she's talking about. What you think that there can only be what in marriage?
I'm not sure.
I think it has to do with like the security, of being loved over the long term. Like, you could have that without marriage, right?
Certainly, yeah. I guess, yeah. So I would define, if that's how it came across, I'd redefine that. It's not that it has to be. It's maybe what is expected. When you expect at a marriage, you're going to say till death do us part, right? So there is this expectation around that. There is a comfort when you think that's what you have.
Yeah, there's a comfort level in being legally bound to someone. No, I'm serious. There is. Like,
I know.
Like, it's going to be a pain in the ass for them to leave.
I disagree that
I mean,
yeah, that's fine. I'm allowed to.
Yeah. Especially when you have my lawyer, it's going to be.
I think you can. I think unconditional love exists because when, and I'm going to use a story. I had an animal that I resented. I did not enjoy this animal's presence, and everything about it just reminded me of hate. And one day, this dog was suffering, and I couldn't let it just suffer. So I picked it up, put it in my arms, and just held it, until we got to the vet, and then found out a tumor had burst, and the dog passed away right then and there. And I did not enjoy this dog's presence, but in that moment, regardless of everything in the past, I couldn't withhold my love from this animal, this being that was about to pass, that I felt was in need of my love. Even though I didn't like it, I couldn't stop myself from loving it.
So this is flirting with what our definition of love is, because look, like, we have 8,000 words in the English language that mean the same thing or are different, but when it comes to love, it's just like, yeah, we just need one word to cover all of these different details of what it is. It's such the word love in and of itself is so lackluster in its it's not specific enough. Like, because like the thing that you're talking about there, I would associate as compassion.
Okay.
Like, compassion for that animal. And like, and we can be compassionate for things, but not necessarily love them unconditionally.
I also
it's hard to say what it really means.
I also think that I would agree that I think unconditional love does exist. I would agree that it's next to impossible for a human to portray that perfectly. Probably, and to me, this gets into another topic for another day. But like, to me, that's kind of my ideal. My idea of God is unconditional love. Like whatever we define as God, whatever that being that exists outside of us, that kind of got this thing going. Which I do think that exists. I think it almost certainly begins and ends with love. I think love is probably one of the most important things that exists in reality, but doesn't mean that we can do that very well.
Right. And one of our people said, I love my husband. And Jennifer said, I love my husband and he loves me, but that piece of paper doesn't mean forever. And that's kind of what Tyson was getting at, is that piece of paper kind of withholds emotion because it's of religious reasons more so than the actual tie and the connection that the two people create.
Well, I mean, speaking from experience, like I felt like I loved my wife unconditionally, but over time, conditions arose.
In that moment, though, in that one moment, you did.
Yeah, but that's not unconditionally. Like unconditionally is typically.
But at that moment, it was. You know what I mean?
And again,
it wasn't.
And again, you can still love her. You can still love her today without being with her. Like you can still want the best for her. Like I just think that there is something that is very sweet, very, very much an idealistic thing where it's like, can I be loved no matter how much I mess up? Not and I don't know, maybe there's no human being that could do it.
Right.
But
sure.
But can I just be me and make all the mistakes in the world? And can is there anyone that can accept me still? Like, and accept me doesn't mean you be married to me. It doesn't mean that you have to hang out with me, I guess. Like it means, can you still just want what's best for me? Maybe there's something I need to change, sure, but what if it doesn't? Can you still think that I'm important and worthy of being loved and cared for and stuff? That's the idealistic view of unconditional love that I think about. And
I think that's the bit, though. You know what I mean? I think that's the bit, is that Taboo, we're worried that we're not going to be loved if we are this thing, this taboo, or we enjoy this taboo. Like, we're worried people are going to judge us and they're not going to want to be around us and love us anymore because of this choice, as you call it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it comes to rejection.
Yeah, it comes to rejection. And we don't want to be rejected. That's not something, but at what cost?
I also think that that's probably, one of the reasons why there is an undercurrent of associating like unconditional love with God, in the aspect of like God theoretically doesn't reject anybody.
Right.
So
forgiveness, right?
Mm-hmm. So it'd be kind of interesting though if like we did just have a cruel and vengeful God that was just like reject. And
and that's what I used to believe. That's what I was indoctrinated to believe, and I don't believe that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're both working through some religious rebirths, which will be a lot of fun in the up and coming weeks as we dive into more sort of things that you don't want to talk about. I feel like that's what we were doing here is we're talking about things that aren't normally small talk. They're not things that come up in cocktail conversations and things that you don't talk about with your friends.
But then again, we're three guys in a bar that never met each other, and we're talking about these things, man.
So yeah, and I'm not scared that you're going to reject me after this call for some of the things that I said.
I personally feel like I wish that we had like another 2 hours to the show because like there's a
I
couple
know. Yeah.
there's things in the chat and there's still stuff that about Taboo.
What
that I
are they?
want
Say them
to
real quick before we wrap up, just so that we can kind of tease next week.
Abuse, suicide. Those are the top two that I want.
Power was another one that was kind of thrown
yeah.
around that I feel like we didn't really dive into the subreddits of it.
Like how we talk about manipulation, whether like narcissism.
I love it. I think we should dive into all those things next week. If not, we'll find out.
That's right.
We'll find out what's the bet.
Those are all topics for another day.
All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.